When you received your Sentro Knitting Machine, did the front of your box have this really cool picture of this awesome beanie hat with this braided pattern, but the directions did not tell you how to make it? Same here, but I got you. In this tutorial, I'm going to show how to make this braided pattern on a double layer beanie hat on a 48 needle circular knitting machine. Mine's going to be a little bit different from that picture. I'm going to use the purl side as my exterior to make a fun textural pattern, but hit that follow button because in the upcoming weeks I'll also show how to do this braided pattern on the knit side as well. First things first, I'm going to cast onto my machine. I like to start at the 48th needle and I hook the yarn underneath the needle in the front. Then I'm going to go to the back side of the next needle, so over, and then we're going to go back under the next and then over again. And you're going to do this over and under each needle one time around till you get back to your white needle. And you don't want it too tight and you don't want it too loose either. Next, right before you get back to your 48th needle, we're going to put the yarn down in the yarn holder and then we can crank out as many rows as you want. I'm going to do 60. Once 60 rows is done and I'm back at my white needle, now we're going to do our drop stitch to make that braided look. So here are my 60 rows, and the one thing you want to make sure you do is you don't want to drop all of your stitches down to your cast on. So I'm only going to drop 58 stitches. So this is my 48th needle, my white needle, so I'm going to drop the stitch at my number 1 and number 2 needle. To do this, I like to use a loom pick, and we're just going to take the yarn and we're going to, if it got caught under the number 1 needle, you can back it up just slightly so you can pull up the needle and put the yarn to the back side. And so we're on purpose dropping that stitch on our number 1 needle and then on our number 2 needle. Next, for our 3rd needle, I'm going to make sure it's all the way down in the yarn holder for my yarn, and I'm going to have the number 3 needle catch the yarn so it hooks it in place. And now we're going to take our loom pick and we are going to pick out these stitches. So take the loops off of the 2 small pegs of your number 1 and number 2 needle, and now we're going to drop the stitches by picking them out. And as you can see, as I'm picking these out, there are 2 little loops, and those 2 loops you want to keep intact, so you don't want to drop all of the stitches down to the cast on. So that's why I'm going to just pick out 58 stitches going all the way down like so. Once I get all the way down, we're going to take those 2 loops and I just pull them a little bit so they are out. You just got to be careful right here. And I pick them up with my loom pick. And then I kind of give them a little bit of a tug so they're a little bit more open and I have more room to work with. And then I'm going to transfer them over onto my crochet hook. And so once you get these onto these 2 loops onto your crochet hook, the next thing you're going to do is take these horizontal bars that you dropped and we're going to pull the 2 loops over the horizontal bars. Now you want to end with just 2 bars at the very end. So what I did is for my first one, I put 2 bars on my crochet hook and I pull them through. For the remainder of these, I'm going to do 3 bars at the time so I get a thicker braid look for this one, but you can do whatever you would like. But what you want to do is make sure you do your math. So at the very end, when you get back up to the peg, since we only dropped 2 needles, we only want 2 loops left on the hook. So since I've dropped 58 stitches, I did 2, and then I do 3 for the next 18 slip stitches, and then that will give me a remainder of 2 bars at the end to put back on to my needles. And then I just continue all the way up, and you can see this braided look starting to take shape after we are doing our slip stitches. And I do pull a little bit just to kind of keep them tight, and it does get tighter the more you go up to the top, so just take your time at this point. And now here we are at the end, and I just have 2 bars left. So we want to take those 2, slip them through, and now these 2 loops that I have left on my crochet hook, I take my loom pick and we want to put the first loop that's closest to the hook, I always like to put that one on the right side or the right needle, and then the back loop on the left needle. So if you dropped 3 stitches, say you did 3 needles and dropped 3 needles and slip stitch them back up, then you would want your remainder bars at the very end, you want to have 3. So it's just however many you drop off of the needles, you want that many bars left over so you can re-hook them onto the needles on your machine. And the loom pick really helps with this. If you do not have a loom pick, then you can also use a paper clip as well. But the loom pick does give you a little bit more dexterity to put this loop back on those 2 little pegs. And usually I have to put just the first loop on one of the little pegs because it's a little bit finicky. So just take your time when doing this. And if you can't get them on both pegs to start, that's okay. Just keep it on the one, and then take the other loop off of the crochet hook, put it on your other needle, and then get the loops around both pegs. So sometimes it's easier using both the crochet hook and the loom pick to do this. Sometimes it's easier to use your fingers to get that loop over both of those small little pegs, like so. And so next what I did is you could do now as many of these slip stitches as you want. I'm going to do 4. So for the next one, I did the 12th and 13 needles. I dropped those ones and then braided it back up. For the 3rd braid, I dropped the 24th and the 25th needle. And then for the 4th braid, I dropped the stitches at the 36th and 37th needle. So I just did 4 braids for this hat, but you can do however many you would like. And you're just going to do the same thing. You're going to drop the stitches and then you're going to slip stitch them all the way back up. And so I'm just fast forwarding this so you can see the 2nd braid going up. And then you just want to be consistent with ending with 2 of those bars left on your crochet hook and then put them back onto your machine. So next, after you get your other ones done, now we're going to crank the remainder of our rows. So once you get back around, now we're going to start cranking them down, but you want to make sure that loop doesn't pop off of your needle. So when I start to crank these rows, I take my loom pick and I hold the loop of the yarn so the needle comes up and it doesn't pop that piece of yarn over. And then once it goes through the yarn tensioner, now it's hooked into place. And then you can crank your remaining rows once you've done that. So after I did the braids, I did an additional 70 rows to get a total of 130 rows for my hat. And this does not include the cast on or the cast off. And then here I'm just casting off the project with my needle. And then next we're going to make our double layer beanie hat, which is just like making a normal beanie hat. And we can finish making our double layer beanie hat. So the side that was just the rows with no drop stitch, that's going to be my inside layer. And I put both tubes on the same side of the hat, and then the exterior is the part that's going to have the drop stitch. Now you can complete your hat just like normal. You can take those 2 tubes, and there's our double layer right there. So that's going to be the bottom. And then here's the 2 tubes on one side, and we want to take the end of our working yarn and cinch it down. So I like to cinch it down and then I make a knot with the yarn so it doesn't come undone. And then I also like to take a needle, and after I do a knot to secure it, I also like to sew it back and forth so that cinch does not come undone. And then I do the same thing with the outside layer of my beanie hat. I cinch down that part, make a knot, and then I sew it back and forth again a few more times to make sure it is secured. And then I also tie the tail ends together a few times as well on the outside and the inside. Next, I tie the 2 tail ends of my yarns together and I put them through the 2 layers of the beanie hat and cut off any excess. If you would like to add a pom-pom, you can also do that. These are pom-poms I get off of Amazon that have an elastic band on them, which makes them really easy to put on. They are in my Amazon storefront. The link is in my bio. And there you have it. There's your beanie hat with the braided pattern. Please like and follow for more, and happy crafting.